Welcome to Moments with Mary Ann. This is your host, Mary Ann Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Mary Madeiras, who's here to share with us her new book, The Akashic Records, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying that life doesn't come with a manual. But what if it did? What if there's actually a divine blueprint and it's something you can access? Would you want to dive into that? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Mary Madeiras is an advanced Akashic Records practitioner, author, and 3-time Emmy Award-winning television director whose career bridges the worlds of spiritual transformation and broadcast storytelling. She has opened the Akashic Records for individuals and corporations worldwide, offering soul-level guidance, healing, and divine remembrance. Mary's celebrated directing career spans news, talk shows, sports, and 7 top-rated daytime dramas, including General Hospital and Another World, earning her the 3 Emmy Awards and a Directors Guild of America Award. So welcome to the show, Mary Madeiras.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I always love talking about the Akashic Records.
Oh my goodness. Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this. I mean, I want to dive into your life path, though, because I find it so fascinating. Why don't you share with us a little bit about your background and how you even got started in the Akashic Records?
Sure. Most of my career, coming out of college, I went into television. I worked at CBS News in New York. I always wanted to be in, some form of storytelling, I'll say that. And so I worked my way up from being literally a secretary, because back then it was called that. Today it's called assistant, and worked my way up to eventually directing. And so then I moved through the networks, and I always wanted to be in fictional storytelling, I'll say that, put it that way. So I wanted to move over to soap operas. So I did. So I'd worked 10 years in news and sports in New York City. And then I was able to slide over into soap opera land, where I directed like 7 soaps on the East and West Coast. And that's where I got 2 of my Emmys that I now have. So during that time, it was wonderful. I loved my favorite part. I loved it. My favorite part was working with the actors, I should say. And during that time, I was always leaning or maybe overlapping the metaphysical world. But I was doing it, sort of privately, because the people that I was working with in the networks are, I'll just say they're a little bit more left brain thinking. So I would go to workshops. I followed Abraham Hicks, who are still going strong and wonderful. The Eckhart Tolle's, Oprah was doing a lot of that kind of expansive thinking with Eckhart Tolle. So the usual, I like to say the usual suspects in the metaphysical world, Louise Hay. And so I was always, it's not even just interested, it triggered something, a familiarity in me, a knowing. And then, it just was like the end of my soap opera career. Also put it that way. It was, or that career was drawing to a close in a sense. Things were changing. And, it was just a sort of like, I guess it's in my book, a bizarre event where I was not renewed in my contract, and there was really no reason given to me except changes in the soap itself. That was on General Hospital. And so after that, I was having a psychic reading. I would go to these different psychics every so often. And there was one that I used to go to a lot out in California. And she saw a being over my shoulder. And she said, there's this being, he looks like a genie. And he's telling me that he oversees your Akashic Records. And I said to her and asked her, what are those? I don't know what they are. And she actually said, I'm not sure either, but that's what he says he does. So, there weren't choirs going off, but I was like, I know this. So I started to research the records and still didn't quite pay attention, was still trying to get back into television. I mean, I had spent nearly 30 years in that career. And so then I was in a metaphysical bookstore in LA, the Bodhi tree, which is no longer there. And I was in a back room by myself, and there was a book teetering off the shelf above me. It called its attention, or my attention to it, and I pulled it down, and it was called How to Read Your Akashic Records. And I was like, "Uh-oh, okay." So that's where I started. I read it, and then I knew it. It was just something I knew, and so I just stayed open and surrendered to it, and it just got better and better. Really. Well, I expanded, and then I decided to study at the Center for Akashic Studies outside of Chicago with Linda Howe, and that's whose book was above me that was coming off the shelf. It was Linda Howe's book, and so that brings me to now.
What a remarkable journey. And
Mm.
to also have such profound insight from folks who are very well known in that arena.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I've my own journey in the records is, how do I want to say this? I am an example of how the Akashic Records are an amazing tool for each one of us in our lives, because everything that I've gone through, and it's in my book, things that I was struggling with, they're in my book. I would take them into my own Akashic Records for insight and wisdom, and clarity and affirmation from the divine realm itself. And um, and that has brought me to where I am now, and I'm still expanding. So my having had the experience of living my life through the record since about 2008 is when I began, when that event happened. So from 2008 until now, I have been just expanding. Every time I'm working in the realm, whether it's my own records or I'm working with someone, that divine is just washing over um, everything with clarity, with love, with sort of like it's a quantum love. It's pretty amazing. And so it helps others. I think people resonate with me when they work with me because I have lived a journey of regular, rough life stuff, and trying to figure things out and figure ourselves out. So it makes me relatable, which I think is very important.
So many people may be asking, okay, so what are these records? Can you
Yeah.
share that with us? And why does this even matter? How can we use these?
Yeah, great question. Well, the Akashic Records are a quantum divine realm. We could call it a space. It's a quantum space. It's a quantum field, which now is being accepted and spoken about from scientists who are dealing with quantum physics. We now know that there's this field. Nikola Tesla talked about it. There's a field that exists, and it can receive imprints, we'll say, quantum imprints of everything that moves about in life. And so the idea of the Akashic Records is that there is this field that has been there since the beginning of time. And every human soul, well, not just, and all beings, I should say, but our souls choose to come into a lifetime, and everything that every soul lives, thinks, experiences becomes etched into this realm. We could say it's like a spiritual imprint of each of us as a soul from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And so when we're able, well, we're not when, but we are able to access that realm individually. And what we're doing is basically we're accessing our own soul's journey from lifetime to lifetime, which is why many will talk about accessing past lives through the Akashic Records. Yes, we can. But because the Akashic Records, which is divine, it is of God, source, universe, whatever we want to call that, creator, it is a living essence. It's a living quantum moving field. And I love that science is now measuring it and talking about it, because it takes the woo-woo out of it and the weirdness out of it, right? So the Akashic Records have been around since the beginning of time. They've just been called different things. So they're referred to as the Book of Life in the Bible. The Quran's got its version of this idea of a realm that records everything about human life, um, and thoughts and actions. There's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Um, Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, was accessing the Akashic realm. Um, there's so many. Rudolf Steiner, philosophers. There have been so many people and organizations or cultures that have talked about a field that basically records everything that we do. So it's not new. It's just, I think, more available or known to us maybe right now because consciousness is expanding and the frequency of our planet is raising. It's even Greg Braden speaks of this. The magnetics of the planet are changing. Heart coherence is happening on a greater level. And so I think what my belief is that our vibration as a humanity is raising itself so much that now we're closer to, people say the veil is thinner. We're closer to that higher vibratory state known as, source, God, universe. And so I think it's easier to hear.
That's just so remarkable how that's available for us. And you're so right. I mean, you hear just in all these other cultures and ancient wisdom keepers, they talk about this hall of records or this place we can go for information. What
Mm.
has been one of the most profound messages that you've received in your own records?
Well, because it's part of my own soul's journey, we learn what our soul's journey is, chosen journey, I might add, is that when I would ask about, things in my life, I want clarity on this, should I take this job, go here, things like that. And then there would be more profound thoughts, more profound messages on top of the clarity, my getting clarity. Um, and that's why I wrote the book, because I had to share these messages. So there are, and I'm saying that because there are so many profound messages that I've received that are not, some of them are not what we're used to hearing. I'll say that. Like, um, we're actually immortal. That's a big one. And it's pretty profound the way the records talk about this, because we know this. We know that our spirit souls go on. That's pretty much been accepted. But there's an exception, or an accepting of that idea. But the idea is that we actually can stay on this planet if we want, as long as we want, healthily, live healthily. So that's a big one, and pretty profound. The other another profound message from the records is that we all of us are actually more than okay. We're more okay than we think, because we have God's source inside each one of us. And that is the power of that. There's no power greater than that. So we have that. And there are systems around us that have been created from unlove or undivine or non-divine. And we don't have to name them. I think a lot of people hearing this will say, yeah, I know one or two. And these systems have talked us out of our own power and out of or into thinking that we need to rely on these systems in order to thrive. So the profound message is, no, we don't. We have everything inside us. And so what I love about the records as a tool, is the records remind us. It's like a remembering machine. When we're in our records, you remember. It triggers a remembering of who you are on a very deep level and on a very divine level. It happens 100% of the time, no matter what I'm talking about or asking the records about. So that's a very profound message.
Well, one of the things in your book that I found very fascinating is you talk about how the records really share that everything is an asset. And I think some people go, well, how about my trauma or my
Mhm.
pain or maybe shame that I'm carrying? How can a negative experience be an asset?
Well, thank you for asking that. That's a very im- common aspect to my work. Comes up all the time. what happens is so when we hear it, we can hear it a certain way, like you just framed it, which is, wait a minute, my trauma is a good thing. No, literally taken. No, of course not, because the records do not um, invalidate any pain that we as human beings have experienced or are experiencing. What we get to do, though, here's how the records help us understand the idea of it becoming an asset. Everything that we have in our life and live in our life, according to the Akashic realm, is according to our soul's chosen journey, something that we've chosen from the other side before we incarnated. And we don't choose the specifics. We don't say from the other side as a soul, I'm coming into a creepy family and I'm going to be beat up. It isn't that way. But we may be choosing to come in to or come onto the planet at a certain time to expand an expression of self-love or an expression of love itself or compassion, something like that. I like to call those overarching themes. That's what I think the soul chooses. So when we go through really rough times, and so many of us have, what the records like to do is the records don't really want us to go back to the specifics and pick it apart. They also don't want us getting rid of it because those are part of our experiences. So they have to have some value. And so what they encourage us to do is to identify what the energy of the trauma was, because everything is energy. And, it doesn't happen like in two or three sentences or 5 minutes. It's really when we keep working in the records, this starts to unfold in a very magnificent way. So we look at the trauma. We don't have to be specific about it, but then we can remember the energy of it. And when we know the energy of the trauma, there's an opportunity to separate the energy itself from the trauma itself, because the trauma really is the event or the events specifically at that time that occurred. And yet the energy is something that they come and go, but the energy is still around. So, for example, if somebody has been abused in some way, there's an energy of that, which is somebody taking your power away. It's very powerful, the energy. Anyone who is doing that to somebody else is exerting a power. And so the energy is a powerful energy. And if we can look at the energy of those events as, the one who's gone through them, there's an opportunity to shift that energy and allow that energy to pour through the light that we are in the now time, like now. So in other words, if we're now human beings, we're older and we're trying to do the best in our lives and we care about people and, we're not in that traumatic place anymore, we can actually channel through that energy, that power that was around us during those events. And it transmutes the events themselves. So it doesn't make them go away, but all of a sudden there's a value to them. And then the next step is we can look at those events that happen and then look at them in the light of our own soul's journey that hopefully we're coming to when we visit our records. And they always fit. They fit in some way. As an example, someone who was told to shut up all the time, they go on to be lawyers or speakers. It's really amazing. And they might not have had they not been shut down and shut up when they were little. So it's it's deep, but it's also very let me just say it makes sense. When we look at it in this way through the lens of the records, somehow it makes sense and it becomes more empowering. So no, we're not justifying trauma at all or the pain of it. But we can look at that trauma through the lens of divine, which is what we really are at our core. And it takes on a different form, best way to describe it. And then it sort of merges into our moving forward with our soul as our soul's journey, on our soul's journey.
So, can anyone access the Akashic Records?
Yep, absolutely anyone can. Yep. What is important is to believe in source, creator, universe, something wonderful that might be at the root of everything, and to know that we are that. It is us, we are it. That's very important. And the other thing that's important is to believe that there, to really, I don't even believe, to know that there is this field that exists. When I first learned about it, I knew it already. So there's a knowing that's needed, because I've had friends that have said, I got this book and I opened it and I said the prayer and I did this and that, and I just sit there and I don't hear anything. Okay, well, what can that mean? Many things. They could be in their own way. Maybe they don't really know. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they're doing it because they want to prove that it exists. So there are a couple of things that are important, and also to be in a space where you could raise your vibration. And that doesn't just have to be meditation. It could be in being in nature, music, or just being quiet, to really allow your thoughts and your ego to sort of settle down, get your ego out of the way, and then you begin to hear, which is how it happened for me. I began to hear blocks of thought that were not my own, and I knew that I was accessing the realm.
So, what is one way, a tip that you can give our listeners and our readers that they can use today to start facilitating a relationship with the Akashic Records?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would read about the records. Just because if you're interested in the Akashic Records, you will naturally be drawn. It's sort of like, the power of manifestation, the law of attraction, actually, is that you'll be drawn to the right resources. And as you are drawn to these resources, it'll ignite the next step and the next step. And and you'll find yourself in the right place. I mean, it sounds like I'm going to say like a lame answer, but that really is how it works. When we really want something and we're drawn to it because it's part of us, or we're acknowledging it's part of us, we're going to be drawn. Things are going to show up in life that will draw us more to it and help us expand within it. So that is one thing. Just, read everything, or listen to people who are speaking about the records, or have an Akashic reading, or well, the reading is the most important thing, because it's really important to, as I said, feel a connection to source. And if we're not sure about that, just go in nature. Put yourself in the middle of nature somehow. And that is the essence of divine. It sits in nature, and it's a living, breathing essence that is around us all the time. And nature is like a sure shot to raising our vibration. And then when you just sit quietly, you can just ask to be shown or to hear, when you're in that space of a higher vibratory, a higher vibratory space like nature, and you will begin to hear. And not to be afraid, you may hear things that just, your mind is not telling you that. That's how it starts. And then to feel good about it. And then I would just write what I'm hearing. So, I mean, I think it evolves differently for different people, but the idea is to raise your vibration, and expand yourself, where your mind is quieted and your soul and your spirit and your heart can all kind of float to the top, in a sense. And when you're in that space place, you will begin to hear. That's what I think is needed.
So, how do we discern our voice from our imagination? You probably get that. People ask that a lot. It's like, am I imagining this? Or is this my voice? Or is this the voice of spirit?
Well, I actually asked my records after, I don't know, working maybe only a year or two into them with them. And I asked in one of my own readings, I sit at my computer, is this real or is this my imagination? I mean, I literally asked that question. And I was expecting on some level to hear, oh no, Mary, it's real. And I heard, of course, it's your imagination. Our imaginations are the most, I don't even know how to what word they would describe it. Our imaginations are so powerful. It's where everything can come in and through, and it's not hindered by anything. There are no boundaries. So it would make sense if I were in spirit form or on the other side somehow. I would want to come in through somebody's imagination, not through their minds, because our minds are, have knowledge in them and some boundaries to some sense, belief systems, things like that. But our imaginations do not. That's why children are so amazing to be around because they're just imagining all the time. And we all feel good when we're around them, don't we? It's because they just can let in everything. So, how to tell that if something coming in is not good? If you're working with the idea and the knowing that there is a God, divine source, creator, it won't happen. It can't happen. I know that there is a source. I know it. I knew it since I was little. It was just called, when I was little, it was called God. Um, but I just know it, and nothing can interfere with that. It's just a very that kind of powerful knowing, you're always protected. Nothing bad can happen.
That's a real strong faith you have. I think sometimes people struggle with their feeling of faith.
Mhm. Well, maybe we can move away from, or take a sidestep from calling it faith. Because, faith implies I'm going to believe in something I can't see. I grew up hearing about faith. I grew up in a Catholic family, and I didn't rebel against it, but I just knew that there were things that didn't make sense to me. Coming in as sinners didn't make sense to me. I don't know how a God or source would create a broken humanity. So I didn't, when I was old enough to not have to stay a Catholic, I wasn't. I moved more out into spirituality and out of organized religion. So I think that if we could use, instead of faith, like knowing, like we know how, I'm going to go to nature again because it keeps coming up. How do we know that, or I should say, don't we know how beautiful things are in nature? And we don't question it. We also know that there are things in nature, whether it's a bee, a bumblebee, an insect, a bush, a tree, whatever. We know that it has a life force of its own. It's resilient. It has a pattern to it. And how could we not know that there's something magnificent choreographing all of this? To me, it just never was a question. So I think I wouldn't even say it's that I have faith. It's that I know. I just know it. Um, and I think that we're moving into a future new earth where it will just be based on knowing.
That's pretty remarkable, and I love hearing that. So thank you for sharing that. I think it takes some of the weight off.
Mhm.
We're not feeling so heavy with it because faith can be a really heavy word, I think, for some people, very
Very
loaded.
much. Yes.
hmm
Yes.
Are you able to access the records for like animals and locations, or maybe even like corporations?
Yes, yes, I have. So because the idea is that anything that is in existence already, we'll say in third dimension, in our third dimensional reality, has its own Akashic record because it would make sense. It's a manifestation of something, so it exists. Therefore, it's got an imprint in this quantum realm. So corporations do because at some point, I refer sometimes to Elizabeth Gilbert's book, which is called Big Magic. And she's the one who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. It's the idea is that, ideas, inventions, they begin in the ethers. They begin out there somewhere floating around. And then we think an idea is all ours. However, it's a match of energy. And this is a wonderful book, Big Magic, to read. It's a fast read. This is the way corporations work. Somebody who had an idea for a product or service, they had this idea, right? And then they form a corporation and they make the product or whatever it is that the company represents. It's the company itself had an essence to begin with. And the idea is that it floats around looking for its match. And then it might come in and through somebody's imagination. And they wake up one day and they go, wow, but it has to be a match. It's a co creation. It's not like the idea comes in and overwhelms somebody. It doesn't work that way. So here comes this sort of, I like to use Harry Potter as an example. Harry Potter floats in, Rowling says, like, whoa, and starts writing it. And at a time in her life when she was really needing to take care of her children and was having a hard time financially. So it was a marriage. So we can actually open up, like if we wanted, I could open up Harry Potter itself because it is a brand. It exists. And then whatever corporation she has, we could open up whatever that is now. We could open up the corporation, and I can actually hear from the records. It has a different flavor to it than the actual CEO or founder. It's pretty amazing. And I've done this with, CEOs or founders and their corporation because maybe they're at crossroads and they don't know what to do with the corporation or whatever. And we'll open it up, and then the CEO and founder is there in the reading, hearing from the essence of the corporation itself, the Akashic realm, the Akashic record imprint, and they kind of realign again with the purpose of the idea of the corporation. So it's remarkable what happens. Animals, same thing with animals, because you always have to have permission, obviously. We can't willy-nilly run around opening people's records. That would be not good. And so with animals, what we do is, and I've done this, is to just when you're in proximity to the animal, you just ask, can I, or do you want me to open, or can I open your Akashic records? The animal's body language will absolutely tell you. They'll turn away, they'll walk away, they'll look at you more intently, which is a yes. So that's how we do that. And let's see, in places, actual addresses. I may be working on a book where I go to sacred sites and that maybe still have some mysteries, unsolved mysteries to them, and open up the Akashic records of those sites because there's an imprint already. It's a place and space that's known to the public, so it has its own Akashic record.
That is just so remarkable. There's so many applications for this and how people can use this to get answers for themselves.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's an amazing, all of the things that I've, not tried, that I've studied, and, and so many of us do that. We call ourselves seekers. Many of us at times, we say, well, I went here and then I did tarot, and then I went here and then I was doing Reiki and I did da. And all of those things are important, or I'm a psychic. That's important too. All of these processes, I think, get us to the same place, which is to hear. It's not even beyond ourselves, but to hear our higher self, because that's what we're really doing. We're accessing our higher self through these various channels. So when I came to the Akashic records, I was amazed and know it. I just know it so well. And I'm laughing because I don't know why I know it, but I do. And I think that that's what happens with people who become Oscar winning actors and actresses, or people who write the Pulitzer Prize books. And you ask them that process when you were doing it, what was it like? And they'll probably be like, I don't know, I just knew it. Or a musician, and they take off and and you ask them during this, what happened? And they'll probably forget, and they'll probably say, I don't know, but I just know. I think it's that same thing. It's a connection of some sort to something that is within us and without us at the same moment.
Just people really getting into that zone. That is
Yes.
interesting, and really it's that divine connection.
Yes, it absolutely is. And it's every one of us. It exists in every one of us. We're all the same. That's my other favorite part of all of this.
So where can people go, Mary, to learn more about the Akashic Way and to be part of your community?
Well, I have a website, theakashicway.com. So you can go there, and I've got things, how you can have readings, and more about the Akashic Records is on my website. And then my book is called The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records. That's on Amazon. So that's it. And, if you want to email me, feel free to. I love when people, my goal is to just have people, get people triggered or excited about something, a resource that they can privately access that is about them, right? And it's not a how to, it's not the 10 steps to do this or that. It's not that at all. You're just meeting up with a higher aspect of yourself. So feel free to email me. My email is mary@theakashicway.com.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, seriously.
Well, thank you, Mary. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Akashic Way. Make sure to visit Mary's website at theakashicway.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.